Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Nancy Pelosi, who, make no mistake, is still very, very powerful in the Democratic Party, apparently sees the Russian boogeyman everywhere, and now is claiming that the organic protests that have spread not only throughout America, but even the world, are a Russian plot or somehow being sparked by the Kremlin. Yeah. Before we show that, let's show Pelosi being interrupted like President Biden has been interrupted by protesters demanding a ceasefire.
Nancy Pelosi, you are complicit in the Israeli crime of genocide. I'm an Iraqi refugee and I watch your government. You represent kill 1 million of my people. You killed 70,000 Afghans, and now over 30,000 Palestinians have died due to your complicity. We demand an end to the Zionist occupation of Palestine. We demand an end to the 17-year-long brutal siege of Gaza to be lifted. We demand an end.
So that was, I believe, a couple days ago at a Democratic Party event, probably a fundraiser, because what other events does she actually go to? And it was interrupted. She just kept going on and on. But on CNN yesterday, she was asked about the protests that are sparking and obviously dipping support for President Biden among the Arab American community, particularly in Michigan, after, tossing some check the box words about we are so upset about the loss of life. Listen to who she thinks is behind these protests.
They're in front of my house all the time. So I have a feeling for what feelings they have. But we have to think about what we're doing. And what we have to do is try to stop the suffering in Gaza. This is women and children, people who don't have a place to go. So let's address that. But for them to call for a ceasefire is Mr. Putin's message. Mr. Putin's message. Make no mistake, this is directly connected to what he would like to see. Same thing with Ukraine. It's about Putin's message. I think some of these protesters are spontaneous and organic and sincere. Some, I think, are connected to Russia. And I say that having looked at this for a long time now, as you know.
You think some of these protests are Russian plants?
I don't think they're plants. I think some financing should be investigated. And I want to ask the FBI to investigate that.
Wow. I try not to make senior citizen jokes because there's plenty of sharp apples among our older population, including viewers of Status Coup. But that is some straight up senile shit. Let me show you a clip for you who might be new to Status Coup. We have been on the ground, among many other stories we cover. John Farina has been on the ground for over 20 protests he has covered since October 7th in America, mostly pro-Palestinian protests, mostly young people. Let me just show you a short montage of the events he's covered.
Palestine is what will be free. Zionism is a killer retreat. Born Palestinian, that's what I'll always be. American too, ashamed watching these politicians run from their responsibility. Here we are bearing witness of this monster-like behavior and some standing by complicit. Children of Gaza, hold your tears and hold them tight. The Zionists will lose this fight.
Never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty, truth, and compassion against injustice, living, lying, and greed.
I made sure that Joe Biden knows that he's complicit in this war. Joe Biden's people, the people that work for him, even protest. They protest against him. Those people are warriors. Those people in this building right now, what are you doing? Sitting at a desk? Get up.
Free, free, free Palestine!
Free, free, free Palestine!
Justice! What do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want it? Now!
I was looking for Putin's disciples in the crowd. I mean, this is so incredibly absurd. And we have to look at the history here. I mean, when I was at Standing Rock, they were saying Standing Rock, the Democratic Party, they were saying Standing Rock activists Russia is part responsible for the Standing Rock protests. They're infiltrating. They're ginning up these protests. They said Russia was ginning up Black Lives Matter protests. They said Russia was ginning up climate protests. And now protests across America. A lot of young people, plenty of middle-aged, older people too. Protests across the globe. Russia is behind this. It has the hallmark of Putin. Listen, I don't pretend to be some geopolitical expert. Obviously, we cover mostly domestic things. But common sense, why would Putin want a ceasefire? Wouldn't Putin want America bogged down in a Middle Eastern war for as long as possible? Wouldn't Putin want us spending as much money as humanly possible in flooding Israel with weapons that they are using to commit genocide in Gaza, by the way? Why would Putin or Russia want a ceasefire? I think they would want the opposite and want us entrenched in another Middle Eastern war and maybe even get involved ourselves, which might happen. You're now seeing the Republicans. Gotta love all these leftists over the years, air quotes on a leftist, for saying the Republicans are more anti-war than the Democrats. And I was always like, what? All these Republicans want war with Iran yesterday. They want war with China yesterday. And now, after tragically 3 American soldiers were killed in Jordan over the weekend, Lindsey Graham and all the Republican usual suspects are calling for us to bomb Iran and go to war with Iran. Again, Putin would want us involved in the Israel-Gaza war. They would want us involved in preferably troops on the ground in Jordan and Syria, even though we already have them. I don't know if it's, and I'm not trying to be an ageist, I don't know if it's legitimately a cognitive issue here, some senile, I don't know if it's a word, senility, or if this is just a really, really, greatest generation. I think she's older than a baby boomer, just stuck in 1985 and the Cold War. It is laughable. And by the way, it shows you the disconnect with the Democratic Party and the younger people that are fleeing away from Biden and the Democratic Party. Why she thinks Putin is behind the kids that were at that protest with their parents, by the way, or the Arab Americans who are standing outside in front of the United Nations that we just showed you, calling out the UN. It makes no sense. And it repels younger people away from the Democratic Party even more. To be fair, she did say, I don't think all of the protests are, concocted or Russian plants, but even inferring some of them are. There is zero evidence of such. And it just continues this beyond slippery slope for any form of protest, any movement in America that they don't like or is against their client states in the Middle East or elsewhere. They could just say, it's Russia. And then the media runs with it. From the beginning, including when I was at TYT, was poo-pooing Russiagate and saying, there's no evidence of Russians attacking the DNC. And in fact, years later, we found out the third-party security firm, I think it was Tiger Strike or something like that, CrowdStrike, excuse me. They testified to Congress they never had any physical evidence that the emails were exfiltrated from the DNC by Russia. And the DNC would not let the FBI inspect their servers. Why would they not want the FBI to inspect their servers if Russia hacked the DNC? I covered Trump's campaign in 2016. They couldn't show up on time. They couldn't put out an event without glitches, much less collude with a foreign government. But I said you should be following the money because the real collusion is Trump has been money laundering through Russia since the 1980s in his real estate business. At his highest priced clients in his real estate business, his most consistent clients were Russian oligarchs buying up properties in America. That's why he was so deferential and kind to Putin, not because he was colluding with Putin. I mean, it's just absurd. And the reality is, I think the election will be close. Right now, the polls do not look good for Biden, but I do think if it's Trump-Biden, it will be closer than it looks now. But if Biden loses by a state or two, I believe one of those states is going to be Michigan. I believe he's going to lose Michigan because Biden has been supporting Israel's genocide in Gaza. Biden could end this right now by picking up the phone and cutting off the blank check to Bibi Netanyahu in Israel, and he refuses to do so, I believe, because he's still living in 1980, and he thinks if he does that, he's going to lose more voters than he is losing now by alienating the pro-Israel vote. But the reality is, you're not running for president of America. You're running for president of 6 or 7 states. Unfortunately, because of the Electoral College, which is undemocratic, you only have to worry about 6 or 7 states. That's what decides the elections. And in the critical states, which right now are Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, but let's look at Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. He's got a shot in Pennsylvania, I believe. Got a shot in Wisconsin. I think he's going to lose in Michigan because he is supporting Israel's slaughter and genocide of Gaza. And Nancy Pelosi, who is still very, very instrumental in the Democratic Party, is supporting it through these absurd comments. And it's an insult to the young people in New York City and DC and elsewhere, and the middle-aged people and the older people that have been out there protesting for days, for weeks, for months, protests that we have been covering, which is not cheap, by the way. Obviously, we pay John, obviously, to use our live view, which allows us to go broadcast live. It costs money per month, about $700 to $1,000, depending on how much we use it. It's not cheap to continue covering these protests, but we do it because it's very, very important to lift the voices of those people protesting, because CNN sure is not lifting those voices. So if you can, support us, statuscoup.com/join, sign up as a member for $5 to $10 a month. But Nancy Pelosi, the Russian boogeyman, is behind these protests.